The best way to understand this gospel is to back up for a minute to the book of the prophet Ezekiel in the Old Testament, where Ezekiel is given this charge by God to tell all of the priests and the elders and the people in the old temple that the Lord is going to leave. And there's this very dramatic scene in the 10th chapter of the book of Ezekiel where God, in the form of a cloud, just like in Egypt when a cloud led the people through the Red Sea into the desert, the same cloud in the Holy of Holies, the most important sacred part of the temple, rises up like a cloud of incense and blows out the door. And Ezekiel tells the people, God, Yahweh, Adonai, has left. He has left the temple. God no longer dwells in the temple because of the people's, especially the chief priests and the elders and the Levites, because of their corruption and their sin. And up throughout the rest of the Old Testament, all the way into the New Testament, that cloud never returned. And the way it went was it went east through Jerusalem, through the Mount of Olives, and then out the door, in a sense. That's the background. Now, here's Jesus. God coming back through the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem and then back to the temple. This is God coming back, right? Coming back to teach and be with the people. And that's where we want to start, right? We want to start with understanding what he does with the writing on the ground, with the casting of the stones on the ground, the people leaving, and then saving this woman. Right? I have memories. My teenage years, I don't know if you know this, but teenagers can be quite moody, right? A little bit moody, right? A little bit inward focused, right? And no fault of their own, because their parents are usually wrong, right? Kidding, parents, right? Kidding. But a bit moody. Well, I have strong memories of being a teenager. Most of my teenage years, I don't know, like 14-ish, 13, 14, to like 17, 18, I guess. On Sunday, laying in bed, awake, hearing my parents come down the hallway, knowing that they're going to come into my room and try to wake me up to go to church. And I would act like I was still sleeping. Right? And I would sleep even after they shake me, right? Because I didn't want to go to church. Had no desire to go to church. Zero. But of course, my dad, or eventually would drag me up, right? Dominic, I'm not going to tell you again. We have to go, right? So I get up, right, mope down the hallway, right? And then get into the car. And then drive to church. And then people in church say hi to my parents. My dad was an usher at that time, so everyone's saying hello and, "Hi, Dominic, how are you?" And then sit in the pews. And all of that is teenage stuff. Not much fault there. It's fault, yes. Not good. But what was really bad is I would sit in the pew, and Mass would be happening. And the music would start. The priest would walk in. And I would think to myself, for each part of the Mass, last week they had 4 servers. This week, there's only 2 walking in. Last week, the music sounded better. This week, it doesn't sound as good. No one's really singing the songs. Last week, the priest said a much better homily. This week, it's not very good. And I would be glad. I'd be happy. I'd be rooting for the church, the service, the people involved to fail. That is not good. That is very, very bad. Very bad. That's a sin against the 5th commandment. Thou shalt not kill. In my heart, in my mind, I wanted to kill the liturgy. Why? Because I was upset I had to be there. I didn't like having to go. And it was beyond being bored, right? There's always that. Or not being very good at times. I didn't like the condition the church was putting on me as a teenager. And the things that it said I couldn't do. That's 100% what it was. And boredom and not lackluster liturgy was just a surface level excuse. So I would literally, I am not exaggerating, root for it to fail. The glory of the Lord leaving the temple, leaving the hearts. That's what mortal sin does. God cannot exist in a heart like that, in a church like that, in a temple like that. And so he gets up and floats away. In the Old Testament. Now, Jesus again comes back. He comes back today, and he goes face to face with this cynicism. And that's what it is. It's cynicism, right? And there's this woman. She's caught in the very act of adultery, is what we heard. Now, pause for a second and think what that means. She was caught in the very act of adultery. What were those priests doing? I mean, that is weird stuff. I mean, John painfully details that. And in the original language of the gospel, it's not an English interpretation, right? It is there. The actual, real, very act of adultery. These chief priests, these Pharisees, and then he goes on to say, it's because they wanted to trap Jesus. They were not concerned with the good of this woman's soul. They could care less about her in the very act that they wanted to stone her. You don't destroy something good, you throw it away. They were willing to throw her away to get Jesus, to watch him fail, to trap him, to catch him in lies and falsities. Just like teenager Dominic was not concerned with the lack of goodness in the liturgy. Oh man, maybe I should serve or read or volunteer or sing louder or pray harder. I was paying attention to the lack, but because I wanted it to fail. The Pharisees are paying attention to the lack because they want Jesus, God, to fail. And don't think just, wow, those Pharisees, so bad. See ourselves there. In this gospel story, put ourselves on this 5th Sunday of Lent, right? We're almost to the end. There. Where do we have these kinds of attitudes? Cynicism, gossip, slander. Those are all stones, right? Not physical stones, maybe, But those are stones that we throw at people or places or institutions. And just because we don't physically kill a person or a church or a liturgy, in our hearts, we've committed murder. If you hate your brother, you are guilty of murder in your heart. Throwing those stones. So what does Jesus do? And what should we do? Right? He calls out the sin for what it is. We recognize it in ourselves. Yep. Man, every time I read the gospel, Lord, it's like you're holding a mirror up in front of me. And I got to look at myself and say, you fool, why did you do that? We recognize it. We call it out. Call it out. Don't be afraid to name it today. Jesus names it for us. Right? He writes it into the ground today. All of those sins of the people who are holding those stones, writing that, St. Augustine says, those sins on the dirt. Yeah, there's mine. Oh, wait, I have another one too. Oh my gosh, a third one. Oh, Lord. 7, 8, and 9 are my sins too. But then, don't be depressed by that. Then we take the position of the woman who sinned. Jesus says to her at the end, go and sin no more. He didn't say, let it go, no big deal. Go and sin no more. But we take her role. We let Jesus then pick us up. Right? Pick us up. He touches us. Even though we have all of that stuff, God doesn't just come to dwell in our presence again. God puts his hand on us. God puts himself in our hand or in our mouth. He chooses to come with us, be in us, walk with us, and we let him do that. Once we recognize the need for him, let him pick you up. Oh, Jesus. Thank you. And that's where it is. You don't count the past anymore at that point. You've dropped the stone. Don't go pick it back up. Let Jesus' hands fill your hands as he picks you back up. And then you walk forward, new. Deacon preached last week about newness. The week before that, we had the prodigal son, newness. New creation, new creation. You walk away new. That's what this gospel today is about. And I'll close with this. Again, the Pharisees wanted to kill her, this woman, to use her. That was her only dignity. But God counts us infinitely worthy because God saves the woman. You save what is precious. You don't throw it away. You save what has dignity. You don't put it in the dumpster. You save what has worth. And you choose to suffer and sacrifice for what has worth. You don't discard it. Jesus has counted us as precious and worthy. Recognize that. Sin no more and walk forward in that newness of life and help others to do the same. Amen?